Hi, I'm Neil, and today we're going to be looking at doing some repairs to a walking foot machine. This particular machine is a 211U 566, and they're a little bit different. Some are different than others, and we'll start with this one today. Okay, I'm going to start with timing of the machine. As you notice, I've got the pressure feed off, the inside and the outside pressure feed. I'm going to take this screw out here. It holds the base into place. Put that back on, and one spot that goes on, you'll notice that the bobbin case base has a notch on it right on this end here, right here, and that fits into the plate. It keeps it stationary. We'll start with the timing. I'm going to bring my needle bar all the way down as far as we go by turning my hand wheel towards me. Okay, back down again. And this machine has a timing mark, but we'll go over that and show you if you run into if your machine does not have a timing mark, then what you need to do. But you'll notice right here on the needle bar, if I go up here, you're going to see a mark right there, and then another mark 1/8 of an inch above it, and that one is roughly about where that bushing is. So I'm going to turn my hand wheel towards me, and I'm going to bring that second mark up into the same position the first one was. So in other words, I'm having my needle bar travel up 1/8 of an inch, and at that point, if I follow my screwdriver down here, you're going to notice that the point of the hook is sitting right at the needle, right in the scarf of the needle. And if it's moved this way or that way, then of course I've got to retime the machine. And this one's a little bit quick, so what I'm going to do is retime it by tipping the machine back. Okay, so to time the machine, we're going to loosen the two Allen keys and screws off. There's one on here and one on here on this small gear. So I loosen them off and then tip the machine back down. Again, turning the hand wheel towards me. I'm bringing that needle bar to the bottom dead center and continue towards me, and bring that the lower mark up where the first one was when the needle bar was down at its lowest point. And at that point, I turn the hook till it's right at the needle. Okay, so we'll tip the machine back down. Just make sure that belt's off. And I'm going to turn my hand wheel towards me. Bring the needle bar all the way down again as far as it'll go. Okay, and as you can see, if you follow the screwdriver up here on the needle bar, you can see the top mark, which is what tells us where the needle bar should be sitting, and that actually should be sitting flush with this bushing here. So we've got to readjust that a little bit, but all I'm going to do is using these marks as a guide to have this needle bar travel up that same distance. So the second mark, or the lower mark, is going to be where the upper mark was when the needle bar was down at its lowest point. And then I'm going to take and turn the hook. If you look down in here, I'm bringing the point of the hook right at the needle, and the point is this piece right in here. Okay, and I'm happy with that, so I gently tip the machine back. And tighten those screws that we loosened here a few minutes ago. And then I'll recheck it once I've got it snug. Turn the hand wheel towards me. Needle bar all the way down. There's my first mark and my second mark, and I want this mark to be where this one is. If I continue to turn the hand wheel up to right about there, and you can see my needle bar is, or my point of the hook is right at the needle at that point. I'll be happy with that. Okay, so this is an exploded view of where I'm talking about. You can see the needle, the scarf and the needle, and the point of the hook right there where my screwdriver is touching. So when the needle bar has come up 1/8 of an inch by using the timing marks, and I've turned this hook here around so that the point is right in the scarf of the needle when that needle bar has traveled up 1/8 of an inch. Okay, the next step I want to show is the needle bar height adjustment. And as you can see right here where my screwdriver is, you see one mark and then the top mark. The top mark should actually be flush with this bushing when the needle bar is down at the bottom dead center. So what we're going to do is show you where to adjust that from. Okay. If you look in here, you're going to see a screw right there. I'll loosen that screw off, and I'm going to bring the needle bar up till that mark is flush with the bottom part of that bushing, and then we snug it back up again. Okay, and that's your adjustment for your needle bar. It's pretty straightforward. As long as that top mark is flush with this bushing when the needle bar is down at its lowest point, then that's all you need to worry about. Okay. What we're going to show you here is sometimes a lot of these machines don't have timing marks to go by. So what you would do is turn your hand wheel by hand, of course, in the same direction it would rotate towards us. And I'm going to judge 1/8 of an inch from this bushing down with my fingernail, and then turn the hand wheel towards me, and all I'm doing is getting an idea of, I want this needle bar to go up 1/8 of an inch, and then I can show you at that point where we would be sitting. Okay, and at that point when that needle bar has come up 1/8 of an inch by using my fingernail to judge it by, the point of the hook would be sitting right in the needle like it was with the marks, only without the mark you don't know whether this needle bar has been driven up or not. So you do your timing with your 1/8 of an inch, you've moved the hook around and everything's adjusted the way we explained it earlier. And at that point, the point of the hook should be almost 1/8 of an inch above the eye in the needle. If I turn my hand wheel up, it's going right through the middle of the scarf and the needle. And as long as it's in that general area, then you know your needle bar is at the right height. If it's going through the eye of the needle, then you've got to drop the needle bar. If it's going too high on the scarf up this point, then you've got to raise the needle bar. And without timing marks, that's how you would judge where your needle bar should be sitting. Okay, next we're going to talk about jamming when you get your machine jammed up with thread, what to do. In most cases it's going to get jammed underneath the bobbin case base. So we take our plate off. Take 3 little gib screws that you see here. One there, one there, and one there. You take those out very gently. Take your gib off. Okay, just getting it off here. And then we would take the base out. There's only one spot it'll come out at. You just keep turning it around until it'll pop out. And like that. Clean your thread out. Make sure there's no thread in there. And then put your base back together. And put the gib back on. And once you've done all that, then you're going to check and see. You'll notice that the machine is actually feeding backwards, so it's through the clutch out. The clutch would be this unit here, over on this end, and what it's 3 ball bearings on the Singer 211U, here, there, and there, and they're spring loaded with a ball bearing inside. And what happens is once you get pressure jams up in the hook area over on the left hand side, it'll pop that clutch out. So an easy way to pop it back in would take your stitch length button, push it down, keep turning your hand wheel till you feel it fall into a groove. Okay, it fell into a hole, and keep turning forward until you hear a snap. It should snap back into place. Snap back in so your clutch is back in properly, and so then you're good to go. You would check your timing again at that point, make sure it didn't throw your timing out. And put everything back together and give it a try. Okay, next we'll talk about replacing this take-up spring. I'm going to loosen this screw here. Take that off. Loosen this screw right in here. Pop pop the tension assembly out. We gotta take and turn this screw off here. Take this apart. Okay, and then we would replace the spring. By replacing that, you're going to stick that in just like that. Okay, we'll put our stud in here. There's a slot on there, right there, and the spring, so it catches in there and it goes straight through. We'll stick that in to the machine just like that. Okay, and we'll put the top part of this. Top part, we'll fasten that on here first. Get her all into place there. Doesn't fall apart on me. Okay, and then before I tighten this screw up right here, I'm going to wind up the spring so it gives me a little bit more spring on it. And I'm going to hold it in that position and tighten up the screw. Okay, and then we get the stud on and get the screw tightened up. Line that back up again. Hey, and that's all there is to it. Okay. Okay, next would be oiling the machine up. So what I'm going to do is oil all the red spots first that you see here. They're on all, most machines have the red oiling points. I'm going to put a drop of oil and everything. Some of the back linkages, make sure that they're all oiled. I'm going to turn the machine back. And anything I see turning, I'm going to put a drop of oil on. Around the gears, put a little bit of oil in. Reverse mechanism. Oil on all those. Down and around the feed linkage system. That should be good for the bottom. I'm going to oil the walking foot linkage here. Dropping oil in around the take-up system. Put a drop of oil up in there. Kind of hard to see. Okay. Okay, the last spot we'll look at is in the oiling would be the hook. The hook and the base. The base stays stationary. The hook travels around it. If you don't oil that periodically, you'll wear that out in a hurry, and they're over $200 to replace. So just put a little drop here. Every few days that you're using it all day long, then just before you leave at night, put a drop of oil on that once a day, and you should be good to go. Okay. Next, we'll talk about belt tension. The tighter that belt is, the harder it is to control your machine. Sometimes it'll take off too quick or no control. So what we'll do is go down underneath the stand here. I'm going to loosen this bolt off right here. And we're going to squeeze this belt together. Just so you don't want it squeezed all the way together, but I'm just loosening the top nut off so I can squeeze the belt together. And say about there, and then I'll bring the bottom nut up to meet. Tighten them up. Okay, and you can tell here by looking up here, Now you can squeeze that belt part way, and that just gives you better control for when you step on the pedal. Next, we'll look at how much play we have in the actuating lever. Okay, you notice that the cork clutch that would be built in behind here, when you push down on the pedal, comes up against the motor, which runs kind of continuously. And as it wears, you get more play there. So of course your pivot point on your foot when you're pressing down on it, you will change after a period of time. So if you want to take and change that, get a little less play there, you'll loosen this screw right here. That's so that the brake will follow it in. We're going to loosen this nut here, bring it out, and then we'll wind this in a couple of turns. Wind the nut in. That just brings it closer to the motor itself. You don't want to get too close, or else it'll try, when you go to start the motor up, it'll try to start the machine, and will eventually blow the motor out. Okay. And you see just a little bit of play there between the two, so then we'll tighten this back up. And tighten the screw up here. Okay, we'll take our vice grips, we'll follow the lever down here to the pitman rod, because I've brought this down, so what I'm going to do is loosen the pitman rod up here, this section in the middle, and just raise my pressure foot, my pedal up, and then tighten that back up. There, and that's your motor adjustments. Next, we're going to fill a bobbin. So we're going to come down through this hole down here. Around the tension. Doesn't have to be all that tight, it's a little on the tight side. See the top hole. Do our bobbin. Snap that on, and the way that works for adjustments, you'll notice there's one screw right here. And if it fills a bobbin, if it snaps off too quick, I would loosen this screw, and push it out. Or if it overfills, in other words, if it fills the bobbin up and then starts filling outside the bobbin, then you would take and loosen the screw here, hold the screw and push the lever in towards the bobbin and tighten it back up again. So let's start the machine. Now I'm going to take and fill that out just a bit more. So again, I'm going to loosen the screw here. I'm just going to push the lever out just slightly. There we go. That's how you fill a bobbin. Next, we'll thread the machine. I'm going to come through here, down through that one. I'm going to go through the top hole here, skip the second one, and go into the third one. That's just if sometimes if you have a right hand twist thread, you may have to go into all three holes, but it doesn't run it. You don't have that problem very often. Down around your tension assembly, pick up your take-up spring. There, that guide in through your take-up lever, back in this guide again, through there and through this guide, and through your needle, of course, bottom guide. Some of those got a little bit harder to thread. of course through your needle with the scarf is on the right hand side, the long groove is on the left, and you thread towards your bobbin. Okay, and then we're going to drop our bobbin in here. Okay, and that just drops in. You can put it either way. I usually put them in counter so it spins counterclockwise. And through your spring. That's that. And we're ready to go. We pick up our bottom thread. And the next thing we'll talk about will be tensions. Okay, so now we're going to set our tensions up. And before I start, there's just one area down in your bobbin case area. You'll notice this little piece here. It's called the release finger, bobbin case release finger. And it's supposed to push back on the base just slightly as the thread starts to wrap around the base over at this point. And then it lets go and just creates a little less friction in that area. And if you've got to adjust it with one screw here, you would turn it and just turn it slightly towards the right if you want your base to release a little bit more. Just don't put too much pressure on it. It's hard on the bobbin case base itself. And once you're satisfied with that, it's releasing. Let's see here. Okay, now we'll just set up our tensions. I've got my bobbin case threaded, and you can feel a nice pull on that, which is what you want. So we're going to do all our adjustments from up on this one here. So I'll close my plate. And you can tell by looking at it that I'm kind of laying on the bottom a little bit, so I've got to increase the top tension. So I'm going to go up here and I'll make one complete full turn. Try to see that. That looks good. And notice now I can start to see my bottom thread peeking up through. And that was with one full turn. If I go too high on my top tension, it's going to be laying on the top. If I drop my tension down on the top too much, it's going to be all laying on the bottom. Okay. Next, we're going to adjust our stitch length. It's done with this button here. Okay, we push the button down, grab our hand wheel and turn it, and keep turning until the button falls down into a groove. Once you've done that, keep that button depressed and turn forward on your hand wheel for a longer stitch or backwards for a shorter stitch. There's no numbers on it, you just more or less guess. So let's go right about there. And make sure the button always pops up. Turn it a couple times, make sure you didn't catch your thread and caught it underneath there where I was turning the hand wheel backwards. You notice I'm probably about 5 stitches to the inch there right now. It's a little too long. What I'm going to do is shorten her up here considerably. Real short. Okay, so now I want to lengthen it out just a little bit more. Again, I'm going to press down on the pedal and just turn it a little bit, make sure the button pops up. Go a little bit more. A little bit more. There's a good stitch length there. In other words, we're about 1, 2, 3, 4, about 5 stitches to the inch at that point. That might be just a bit long. I usually like to see it about 6 stitches to the inch. Okay, good to go. that's your stitch length. Okay, last but not least, we're going to look at the height of the walk, adjusting the height of the walk. In other words, you can notice right now how high this one is lifting when we're sewing, and how high the inside foot is lifting. The inside foot is barely lifting, and the outside foot I can actually stick my screwdriver underneath it. So adjust that. What we're going to do is I'm going to turn it so that my outside foot is just about touching. In other words, right about there. I still stick the blade of my screwdriver underneath of it. I'm going to go up to the top of the machine with a good hefty screwdriver. And you're going to look right in here. Okay, and I'm going to turn that screw, loosen it off, and then what happens is the outside foot will drop. Then we tighten it back up. You'll notice how now my inside foot is lifting. I stick my screwdriver underneath there. My outside foot is barely lifting at all, so I let it drop too far. What I do is I just climb over here. It works both ways. Now this time, I'll let the inside foot drop. Right about, okay, so we're going to let it about there. Keep the camera pointed right on that. I'll loosen this screw. Didn't drop that much. I don't think it dropped enough. Yeah, doesn't take much. So let's let the outside foot go, just like that. Trying to get both even out, one to the other. And you notice that's lifting fairly high, so they're about even there now. Yep. And that's all done with that screw that I just pointed up here. Okay, now the next adjustment we'll do, say you're sewing a lot of seams, heavy materials, climbing down off of them, and once it doesn't want to climb up over the seam, it might get stuck and spin coming down off of the seam, which this isn't doing too bad, but you can take and adjust that. Up here on this button here, push it down. Keep turning until it falls into a groove. Fill in. I'm going to turn forward. It takes a fair amount of pressure, sometimes both hands. And then make sure the button pops up. And that's going to make this lift even higher as it sews. So you notice now that I've readjusted that button, how high this is walking now. That would be fine if you're climbing down into a lot of seams. If you're doing a lot of flat sewing, you might want to adjust that back down with this button by turning backwards. You don't need them to walk that high. So I'm just going to turn it back down just ever so slightly. Make sure that button stays up. Go down a little further. Back up just slightly, I went too far. But you notice now it's severely lifting at all. That's not quite enough. So let's go back up just a bit more. Yeah, there we go. Good there now. And that's what that adjustment up here. Okay. Okay, so that's adjustments on the Singer 211U 566. I hope you enjoyed it and you get some help out of it. And thank you very much.